Once again, this is just an introductory course. I'm not soliciting anything. It's purely for you to know what to Google or know what to at least look up so then you can learn on your own before you do anything. Also, my contact information is on the bottom left. If you have any questions during this presentation, because it can get a little technical, please feel free to write them down. And yeah, awesome. Yeah, shoot me a message just like this. Vikram, perfect. Yeah, hopefully I'm able to answer some questions, but write down any questions. And at the end of this presentation, hopefully I'm able to answer them. If not, we could do a one-on-one. Just shoot me a message on WhatsApp. All right, so standard disclaimer, everything here is for educational purposes only. Past performance is not indicative of future performance, and I'm in no way soliciting any securities. So topics for today's presentation. We're going to talk about what is an option. We're going to talk about a put option versus a call option, and this is from the buyer's perspective. We're also going to talk about the put option versus call option from the seller's perspective. And as we get through this presentation, you'll see that it's a transaction between two people. One's a buyer, one is a seller. So that's why we're talking about both. And then we're going to summarize that. Then we're going to go through an example of a put option. We're going to go through an example of a call option, and we're going to talk about some option assignments. Now, using that information, we're going to touch upon 3 income generating strategies that you can use in your own Roth IRA or your own investment accounts. One of them is called a cash secured put. Second is called a covered call. And the last income strategy, we're actually going to combine the two, and it's called the wheel strategy. Then we're going to end with a real world example and a conclusion. Before we get started, has anyone here heard of options or trades options themselves? You could just use the chat. Okay, I guess no one. Well, let's start with what is an option. Here we have a list of different asset classes. We have real estate, bonds, currencies, stocks, futures, metals, and there's a lot more asset classes. Now, each one of these actually have options. And in the next slide, I'll talk about what these are. But specifically, we're going to be talking about options on the stock market. As you could tell from the table of contents, there's 2 types of options. One is called a put option, and the other is called a call option. We'll get into these in a little bit just for you to kind of get an introduction. There's a put option and a call option. So an option is a financial contract between 2 parties. One party is the buyer of the contract. They're also called the long. And keep this green woman in your mind because she's going to show up throughout the presentation. And the other party is the seller, the writer, also known as the short. And also keep this red man in the back of your mind too. He's also going to show up. So just associate green with the buyer, red with seller. And that will help you keep things straight throughout the presentation. Now, the option buyer pays some money to the option seller, and the seller basically writes a contract to the buyer. And let's talk about what's inside this contract. So the buyer, the person who paid the money, remember there's 2 types of options. There's a put option and a call option. Now for a put option, the buyer pays money, but basically the contract which they have now, it gives them the right to sell 100 shares of a stock at a certain price on or before the contract expiration. And for this right to sell the stock, they basically have to pay a premium to sell the stock. Now, the other type of option is called a call option. It's the exact same thing as a put option, except for this one word. The buyer of the call option has the right to buy 100 shares of a stock at a certain price on or before the contract expiration. And for this right, they basically pay a premium to the option seller. So again, a put option and call option, they're the exact same thing, except for this one word. The put option gives the buyer of the contract the right to sell 100 shares. The call option gives the buyer of the contract the right to buy 100 shares. And they're both at a certain price, which is defined in the contract, and it's on or before an expiration date, which is also defined in the contract. And we'll go through this in a little bit more detail in this last section, the real world example, so that way you could kind of see how everything comes together. And remember, for this, they have to pay a premium to the seller. So here's a good way to remember the difference between a put and call. Here's the green woman. Remember, she's the buyer. So this is the perspective of a buyer. Everyone do this with your hands. Pretend you have a phone. You call up your friend using your phone, and after the conversation, you put down the phone. So you call up, you put down. So if you think the stock is going to go up, you would buy a call option. And after the conversation, you put down the phone. So if you think the stock is going to go down, you would buy a put option. And this asterisk and this disclosure in the bottom left is probably one of the most important disclosures in the entire presentation. A lot of variables go into whether to buy options or not. Just because you think just because you think a stock's going to go up, it does not mean you need to buy a call option. And just because you think a stock's going to go down, it does not mean you should buy a put option. The whole point of this is just to keep the difference straight in your mind. So call option, remember, it gives you the right to buy the stock at a certain price. And so you want to call up. So it gives you the right to buy stock if it goes up. And if you think the stock's going to go down, you buy a put option, you put down the phone because it gives you the right to sell a stock at a certain price. Which option is risk averse, call or put? And good question. We'll get to that a little bit. And the answer is it depends on how you use it. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, you're able to, hopefully I'm able to answer that question. All right. So what we just talked about was with the green lady. Remember, she was the buyer. Now we're going to talk about the seller, the other person of this transaction. The seller, they also have the put option and they're the call option. They're the person who receives the money for writing the contract. Now, the seller is obligated to buy 100 shares of a stock if it's a put option, once again, at a certain price and on the contract expiration date. Now, for accepting this obligation, the seller gets paid that premium. Remember the money exchanging hands at the beginning? They get paid some money to accept the obligation to buy 100 shares of stock. Remember, the buyer of the contract, the green lady, put down, she has a right to sell the stock. The seller here is actually obligated to buy the stock. And in the next summary and over the examples, this will be a lot more clear. I know it's a lot going on right now. And with the call option, this obligates the call seller to sell 100 shares of stock at a certain price on the contract expiration date. And for accepting this obligation, they get to collect a premium. So let's go through a quick summary of the difference between the buyer and seller. So the buyer would buy a call option if they're bullish on the stock, as in they think the stock's going to go up. If they're bearish on the stock, the buyer would buy a put option. Now, you could choose to be either a buyer or a seller. So let's say you're a seller. If you're neutral or bullish on the stock, you can sell a call option and you get to basically collect an income because you think the stock's going to go down. As a seller of a put option, you could also, you would be a seller of a put option if you're neutral or you're bullish, as in you think the stock's going to go up. All right, so the next two, we're going to go through examples, and hopefully this will make things a little bit more concrete. I just had to give the theory out there, so then now we can combine them with some examples. Now, think of a put option as car insurance. Every 6 months, you pay your insurance premiums. Do you mind muting yourself, please? Thank you. So every 6 months, you pay your car insurance, and then let's say you don't get into a car accident. That's great, right? But what happens to your insurance premium? You just end up losing it. The insurance company makes that money. But you're okay paying that premium because in case your car does crash, you're happy because your insurance company will buy the car from you. So if you do crash, your insurance company buys a car from you, and that's exactly what's happening here, except instead of selling insurance on cars, put options are basically insurance on stocks. And so the insurance buyer is actually the put option buyer. They're paying a premium to a different party to basically have the right to sell their stock at a certain price on or before the expiration date. And the expiration date, with cars, it's about 6 months. Here, these contracts can range from 1 day to multiple years. So very lots of different contracts you can do. And the insurance company is a put option seller. So anytime you see the word put throughout this presentation, or just, I guess, for the rest of your life, think of car insurance, because that's what put options are. The buyer of the put option is a car insurance buyer. The seller of the put option is the insurance company. All right, now let's talk about call option. Think of this as a due diligence fee on buying a house. I don't know if anyone's tried buying a house recently, but with interest rates so low, it's impossible to find inventory. But if you're lucky enough to find inventory and buy a house, the buyer has to pay something called a due diligence fee. And basically, this due diligence fee allows the buyer the right, but not the obligation to buy a house. So let's say they pay a fee to the person who's selling the house. What happens is they get to inspect the house, and if everything looks good, they can buy the house from the seller. However, let's say they find termites or something and they don't want to buy the house, they could always back away from the contract and they just end up losing their due diligence fee. That's the exact same thing with the call option. The home buyer is a call option buyer, and the person selling the house is a call option seller. Remember, the option seller, the person who owns the house, is obligated to sell the house if the person who paid the due diligence fee decides to buy the house. And that's a good analogy for this. Now let's summarize the difference between put options and call options here. We're going to start with this. The buyer, and remember, the call, associate that with the house, put, associate that with car insurance. So the buyer of a call, if a stock is above a strike price, the call buyer has a right, but not the obligation, to buy 100 shares of the stock at the strike price. Now, all this means is the person pays a due diligence fee to the house, and if the house looks good, they have the right to basically buy the stock. But they have the right to buy the house. But in no means are they required or obligated to buy the house. If they find termites, they could always walk away and they just end up losing that premium. Now, the seller of the house is the one that collects the due diligence fee, but they are obligated to sell the house to the person who bought the house. or to the person who paid the due diligence fee. So if the buyer exercises the option, this buyer, the call seller is obligated to sell 100 shares of the stock at a strike price at expiration, but they still get to keep the full premium. And so they don't really have a choice. They accepted money, but they're obligated to sell the house if the buyer decides they want to buy it. But if the buyer decides they don't want to buy it, then the seller just gets to keep the movie or gets to keep the money, and they get to sell another option. Now, remember, think of car insurance. The buyer, if the stock is below the strike price, the put buyer has a right, but not the obligation, to sell 100 shares of a stock at the strike price. So this means if there's a car crash, the buyer has a right to sell their car to the insurance company at the price that's in the contract. However, if there is no car crash, there's no obligation for the buyer of the contract to sell the stock. And lastly, we're going to look at the seller of the put contract. Remember the car, this is the seller of the insurance contract. If the buyer exercises the option, basically the buyer gets to exercise, the put seller is obligated to buy 100 shares of the stock at the strike price at expiration, but they still get to keep the full premium. So if the car does get into a car crash, the buyer is going to basically file an insurance claim, and the seller is obligated to buy the car that's totaled at the price that's determined in the contract. And this is the exact same thing, but except with stocks, we're doing it with 100 shares at a certain price, which is the strike price, by an expiration date. With cars, remember, it's 6 months. These expiration dates can range from a day to a few years. So now, using this information, we're going to talk about 3 different income strategies. And income is generated being a seller of these options. So we're going to focus only on this side. So with a cash secured put, to do this strategy, you need to have enough cash to buy 100 shares of a certain stock. And so what you would do is you would sell a put option at the strike price we would like to own the stock. Now, there's 2 words here that should make you think of something immediately. Sell, you should be thinking of a red male. Put, you should be thinking about the red car. So you are selling the insurance, the car insurance. That should be the first thing that comes to your mind. So we have it right here. This is the cash secured put seller. On the left, on the y-axis, we have the profit and loss. And on the x-axis, we have the stock price. And I'll be filling in information to guide you through this example. Let's say right now a stock is currently trading at $100 and the strike price is $95. Now, you as the insurance salesperson, basically selling insurance on the stock, if the stock stays above $95, you get to keep a whole dollar in premium. And these are just hypothetical numbers. So feel free to, like later on in this presentation, we'll put in real numbers, but that's why it's just pretty simple. $1, $95, $100, keeping it simple. So if the stock stays above $95, you get to keep a dollar. However, if the stock goes below $95, the insurance company is obligated to buy the stock at this price, $95. But we are obligated because we sold the contract and we got paid $1 to do so. So let's say in 30 days, when the contract expires, the stock is trading at $90. We had to buy it at $95 and we're holding the stock, even though it's trading at $90. But because we collected $1 premium, our overall loss is about $4. But the thing is, you have to compare this to the alternative. If you wanted to buy the stock right now, you could pay $100 and buy the stock, or you could sell a put option at $95 and collect an income just to wait for the market to drop. You don't know if the market's going to drop, but you're okay just waiting because you got to collect a premium. And so by definition, you will outperform anyone who just buys a stock outright at $10. Because let's say you bought the stock at $100 right here. If it dropped $10, you would lose 10%. However, if you sold a put option, it dropped $4. And so you're basically beating them by over $6, even though it is a loss. It's just not as much of a loss. So that is the cash secured put. Now let's move on to the next strategy.
Hey, we hope you're enjoying this video. If you want to learn more about the stock market and learn how to use options to increase your income while reducing your risk to ultimately help you retire early, then we got some great news for you. We actually put together a free email mini course. Just click the link in the description. We'll take you there. You can enroll. After that, come back and you can finish this video. If you have any questions, definitely leave a question in the comments, and we hope you're enjoying this video. Now, back to the rest of the video.
This is called a covered call. To perform this strategy, you need to buy 100 shares of stock, and then you sell a call option against the stock. So again, you see the word sell, you see the word call. What should be coming to your mind? The red male and the house, exactly. So you're selling the house and you're collecting a due diligence fee. Again, same chart here. Here's a profit and loss on the y-axis and the stock price on the x-axis. So let's say stock's trading at $100 right now. What you could do is you could just buy a stock outright at $100. And as the stock increases in price, your profit and loss also increases. Or if the stock decreases in price, your profit and loss also decreases. Just a regular buying a stock position. However, you being a savvy investor, you decide to sell a call option against the stock at $105 strike price. And so if the stock goes up to $105, you still get to basically make that $5 premium, but except you collected an income. You get to collect an extra dollar because you sold a contract and you got paid a premium to accept the obligation to sell the house at $105. Once again, we're using the house as an analogy, but you get paid a premium to sell something at $105. And so let's say in 30 days, the stock's trading at $110. What happens is because you got into a contract to sell the house at $105, you're obligated to sell the stock at this price. And so even though, so the stock can go up to $105 and you get to make a dollar premium. So your profit, your maximum profit is $106. Even though it's trading at 110, you're still obligated to sell it at 105. The reason people do this strategy is because the likelihood of a stock going from $100 to $110 in 30 days is not, it doesn't happen too much. It does happen. And that's why people are willing to pay for the premium, but you're making consistent income. You're making an extra dollar for every single time you sell this contract, and it actually lowers your risk. For example, you could buy a stock right here at $100, or when you sell this option, your cost basis actually lowers to 99 because you sold for $1. So it's actually safer to buy a call option than to just buy a stock outright because you're collecting an income. Now, what we're going to do is combine the two strategies together to something called the wheel income strategy. So it's a 6-part strategy, and I'm going to walk you through the 6 steps. Step number 1 is we sell something called a cash secured put at $95 strike price. Remember, you're selling insurance on the car, as in you're selling insurance on the stock at $95. And we're assuming the stock's right now at $100. So when we sell this insurance, we get to collect income. Now at expiration in 30 days, is the stock trading below $95? As in, is there an insurance claim? If there is no insurance claim, we go back and we sell another put option and we collect more income. And remember, you're just the insurance company. If there's no insurance claim, you're just going to continue collecting this car insurance until eventually the stock does go below $95, in which case there is an insurance claim, and then we become obligated to buy 100 shares at $95. And so in essence, we got paid to wait just to buy low. We're getting paid this premium, and as long as the stock stays above this $95 strike price, we get to just collect income. However, when it goes below, we become obligated to buy at 95. But you do this only on stocks that you want to own for the long run. So only do this on companies which you're very bullish on or something you want to own for the very long run. And so in essence, we got paid just to wait to buy low. Now that we own the stock, basically now that we own the house, we can sell the due diligence fees. We can sell a covered call at $105. Now, when we sell this due diligence fee, this covered call, we get to collect income. Now at expiration in 30 days, is the stock trading above $105? If the answer is no, then that means there's termites in the house and the buyer decides they don't want to buy the stock anymore because the stock's trading below $105. They just walk away. And then you, as a homeowner, you could sell another due diligence fee or another covered call, collect more income. And you continue doing this process until eventually there is a buyer who says, yes, I want to buy it at $105 because the stock's trading at 110 right now. And so it makes sense for them to do it. And so when you do this, you're basically getting paid from the premium you're collecting just to wait to sell high. Now that you sold the stock, you have the cash again to go through and sell another cash secured put at 95. And that starts the cycle again. So you go through over and over again, you're collecting income on the put side, you're collecting income on the call side, and you're basically getting paid just to buy low, and you're selling high, and you're collecting income while you wait. So this strategy performs very well during neutral, slightly bullish markets, and by definition, it will outperform during bear markets. Bear markets are when the market goes down, bull markets are when the market goes up. So now let's go through a real world example. What we have here is something called an option chain. At the top, you could see the symbol which we're trading. This is QQQ, and this information is as of 9:40 a.m. December 7th, so on Tuesday. And this is purely just for illustrative purposes only, just so you kind of can use this theory, which I showed you into a real world example. Here's QQQ, it's trading at 393. And then here you could see the different expiration dates. What I have selected is the January 21st, 2022 expiration. You could also do options on December 31st. It goes all the way up to Monday, the 13th, and goes all the way up to a few years as well. On the left side, you could see the calls. So remember, these are all the house. For the example of the house, you could see all the calls. You could see the total interest, total volume, implied volatility, rho, theta, vega, gamma, and delta. They're all called the Greeks, and they're outside the scope of this presentation, but they are very important for option pricing. Here's the bid and ask. So if you want to sell a contract, you sell at the bid. If you want to buy a contract, you would buy at the ask. And then here are all the different strike prices. Remember, in our example, we used $95 strike price for the put and $105 strike price for the call. But as of QQQ, because $393, these are the strike prices available. Now, looking at the put side, remember, this is the car insurance side. You could see stocks again at $393, and you could see all the different strike prices here. Has the exact same information on this side, the bid asks and different strikes. So we're going to look at an example of the $376 strike price. So if you wanted to sell a put option on QQQ, you would collect $7.72 per share for accepting the obligation to buy QQQ at $376 on or before January 21st, 2022. So if the stock, I know it's an ETF, but if the stock goes, if it stays above 376, you get to keep the entire $7.72. However, if it goes below 376, you become obligated to buy 100 shares at 376. And each one of these are quoted at a per stock basis. So you would actually make $772. You multiply it by 100 shares. And to do this strategy, you need $37,600 in collateral because each contract is for 100 shares. So when you sell this contract, you make $772. Now, let's say you own the stock and you want to sell a call option, assuming the market doesn't change. The market's always moving. So just for this example, assuming the market doesn't change, you would go through and you would sell a call option. Again, same strike price. We're going to use $408 strike price. And so you would collect $536 in premium just to wait for the market to go from 393 up to 408 by January 21st, 2022. If the market doesn't go to 408, that means in our example, let's say there's termites in the house and the buyer decides, I don't want to buy the house because the stock is below 408. And so they just walk away and you get to keep this entire premium. Now, if they're like, yeah, I want to buy the house, you are obligated to sell the stock at 408, but you still get to keep the full income. So that is the highlight of the wheel strategy. And this is what I leave you with. Caution, don't start trading yet. This is just an introductory presentation only. Options prices may gain or lose value even if the direction is correct. And this is due to something called the Greeks, which I highly recommend you learn about before placing any trades. And I'd recommend spending about 50 hours learning before even executing your first trade. The reason is if you do it incorrectly, you can lose more than you've invested if you're not sure what you're doing. So definitely spend time in learning before placing any trades. And that's the end of the presentation. Feel free to connect with me. Any questions?
Congratulations, you made it to the end of the video. We hope you enjoyed the video. We hope you got some value out of it. If you are interested in taking this up to the next level and learn how to actually use options in your investment portfolio, we actually have a full course with a mastermind plus group coaching, an entire package to help you basically get results. Just click the link below. And because you made it to the end, I want to give you a special discount code. So don't tell anyone, but I'm going to give you 30% off the entire package. Just use the code VKYouTube. It should be right here, and you'll get 30% off. Again, don't tell anyone. This is purely just for people like you who make it to the end of the video as a way of me saying thank you for, your time, and really hope that you're able to get some value out of it. If you guys need anything, just leave questions and comments below. Reach out to me on Instagram, DM me. I'm here to help. I'm on your side. I'm cheering for your success. And again, thanks for making it to the end of the video. Remember, 30% off. Take advantage of it while it's still here. Awesome. I'll see you guys later.